think, go ahead.
Thank you. I can give a perspective from the academic side. Johns Hopkins and other universities are working together with the local partners and universities around the world. It's not the easiest thing to do. And one of the issues we, as a group of universities, was down talking to the State Department and USAID just a few weeks ago, along with World Water Day. And one of the ideas that we presented was that to provide an evidence-based approach to see what works and integrating in these students from around the world and to train them in a partnership would be critical for us. The millions and millions of dollars we're putting into it, and none of that money is actually going into studying what works and what doesn't work. And actually what doesn't work is sometimes much more critical to communicate than what does work. And that we need, to be blunt, some money that's appropriated towards this endeavor, not necessarily for our academic institutions. Of course, we're always looking for funds, but to those that want to do it outside, but beyond just putting another widget out there, to really understand it. And that's been a really a refreshing drive forward with the current administration and others in there as we try to push this forward. And help from the UN and the World Bank on that would be something we'd like to encourage and go forward to.
Yes?
Good morning. I wanted to pick up on some themes that the last speaker spoke about in terms of a community, the needs of the community being addressed, that they want to pilot, that they want to see move ahead. And I am skeptical that we're quickly going to get to a place where an individual community is going to be able to identify its needs, access the range of choices that might be available for household water treatment or community level water treatment or small water enterprises. And so I guess I would like to hear from the panel what you see as how can we operationalize achieving these goals?
We and I shared some of your skepticism in the sense that because that's basically the way things have gone on in the past. What our attempt is to address that situation, that problem. Focus, we have teams, once again, Rotary, we have clubs in well over 200 countries. We have clubs on the ground virtually throughout the world. All of our efforts now are local based. We have teams in sight, and that's our plan is to build these local teams that can better identify and address the needs from the local, build on that, and then tie into that funding, defining the appropriate technologies, needs, requirements, and then building into that the funding mechanisms to support that. As I said, we're fortunate at this point in time. Rotary has partnered with the State Department for long-term funding, 3-year funding cycles, and these are meant to be pilot programs and potentially develop once they're refined, use that model in other countries. We are raising funds for other projects, and the goal is to really get away from the sporadic, short-term, episodic project, which is basically what you've said exists, which does, and focus on long-term solutions in those areas. We believe it can be done, and we're beginning to demonstrate that it can be done. And that's our direction, and that's our future vision. And the Rotary Foundation is behind that vision.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Teresa?
Certainly, during disaster, both tsunami and now Haiti, I think we're seeing certainly initiatives to kind of turn the whole problem upside down instead of the organization coming in with the solution, implementing it, and handing it over to the community. I think you're right, it's very difficult to do it, and funding is often an obstacle, but I think the bigger obstacle is to adjust to flipping the paradigm over and having the people who come in view themselves as working for the community, even more so than with, but for, and to really, when we talk about community leadership and ownership, to have that start at the very beginning in needs assessment, selection of appropriate technology, implementation, and then sustainable management. I believe we feel we have begun to do that through the tsunami. You know, we're only 5 years out, and the recovery process is even younger. But hopefully those initiatives that took place in that turned over way will turn out to be more sustainable than perhaps other efforts. I believe we're going to have to bring those same kinds of approaches to Haiti if we're going to be able to do something that's sustainable. But again, it's not even just partnership or ownership, but really turning this whole world upside down and saying that those who are coming in are working for the community that is there. And we will see.
Sure. And I appreciate your comment on not being able to see these type of things. 10 years is you know, that's 40 quarterly reports that someone has to, you know, we try to answer to when we're trying to go in a long term. But I tell you, there's something that we as a group in water and sanitation have to realize, and that's how, two things. One of them is that there was a massive effort for vaccine development, eradication of smallpox, and the goals that we have for polio. We need to have that same principle with respect to water and sanitation to put that effort in there. And that's starting to become aware that everything's connected to water, as we've heard in practice, preaching to the choir, but that's the tie, that we can really improve the value of anything we do if we incorporate water in from the beginning. The other thing I mentioned in the beginning is what we're calling viral scalability. And that is where we're using newer technology. Everywhere I've gone, rural autonomous region of Nicaragua, to the remote regions within Africa, there are cell phones everywhere in the world. I kid you not. I'm so surprised. They don't have potable water, but they've got cell phone access. Someone down the road has it. We're trying to incorporate that not only in developing our understanding of data management back to us, so it's not a snapshot. It is an ability for them to tell us what information they're getting on their water and sanitation, but to educate these people in that way, to make it be a proactive way that then they can say these are working. The problem with that is that disinformation is just as rampant. And so we have this goal that we're trying to achieve, and your point's well taken on.
You know, in the course of following this issue over 5 years, the three areas that I find most challenging are, number one, the whole sharing and pricing issue, which is tied to not only how do you make gains, but how can you sustain the gains that you make on a local level. The second is the notion of how do you apply technology in a way that reinforces connectivity and actually leads to stable sanitation and water resources. And then the third is this notion of integrated water resource management, which many believe, and I believe as well, can be done a lot better if women are given the opportunity to play leadership roles in integrated water resource management, since in many cases they're the ones who are most vulnerable as a result of the water, and they're the ones who know most about how to use that resource wisely. In other cross-sector groups, within NGOs that are successful over a sustained period of time, they generally, number one, on the front end, have high-level buy-in from whatever the organization is that has power in the region. Number two, they tend very early on to be able to culturally bridge. So, for example, in the work that I'm doing between health professionals and water professionals, I'm looking very early on for cultural connects and for pay dirt. Whether they be a focus on the American diet, which in one way we health professionals think of as chronic disease burden, but could be thinking of in terms of water consumption. Or another example might be this notion that the quickest way to energy independence is through proper management of water, so bridging energy and water as issues. Or a third example might be the notion of a water footprint, which has a certain appeal and grab to it. In the U.S., they're already familiar with energy and carbon footprint. So this kind of cultural bridging, high-level buy-in, and then scalability and sustainability, I think, are things that need to be well thought through before one enters into a region with the next brightest idea to fix the problem.